A bunch of people are mentioning traffic safety, specifically on Business 17 in a lot of cases, the safety of the folks using the bike paths, and the need for pedestrian crosswalks. And it just seems that in every area of questioning, that just keeps coming up, keeps coming up, keeps coming up. So we decided as a board that it might be a good idea to get in touch with the fella that I'm getting ready to introduce, because he is the man that can tell us, okay, how can we address these community concerns? Now, my disclaimer to this that I want everybody to understand, we are reacting to what the community has said, and we're trying to gather the information so that we know how to do these things for you if they're even doable. But until we find out how we can accomplish it, then obviously nothing can get done. What Mike is going to speak to is not a Merle's Inlet 2020 action item necessarily. It is simply for y'all to understand what the options are to do what you've asked us to do. So I'm going to bring up here Mr. Mike Wooten, who is on the vice chairman of the Commission for South Carolina DOT.
That's close enough.
Is that right?
That's
okay.
close enough.
All right. Here's Mr. Mike Wooten.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to come before you all tonight. It's been a long time since I've spoken to Chowder Talk. I think the last time was when we did the Merle's Inlet drainage project down here, and that was about 20 years ago. I think it was the first the first water quality project that Georgetown County entered into. After the rain, I noticed that it's still working, so we all did our job the right way. I was asked to come to a couple of board meetings beginning, I don't know, late last month, and I learned a lot about what Merle's Inlet 2020 has been doing the last few years. I also learned a lot about the goals and a lot of the things that the citizens through here want. Now, keep in mind, I just live about a mile that way, but my office is in Myrtle Beach, and my wife tells people that she lives in Waukesha. I just sleep there. So I've been a resident of Merle's Inlet for 30 years, so I know this part of the world pretty well. And I do know that there's been a concerted effort to increase pedestrian safety along Highway 17 business through Merle's Inlet. And there has also been a push by a group, the Bike the Net group and others, to do a better job with the bike paths through Merle's Inlet proper. You know, we've got it pretty well established going south, and other communities are working toward that end. Merle's Inlet's been stymied by the fact that the path of the bikes that they need to take is along a federal highway. And I don't know if many of you know that or not, but it's called US Highway 17 Business for a reason. It's a federally funded road. So DOT, the money that they spend on it, it's about a 20-80 match. 80% federal funds, 20% state funds for all the improvements that are done on Highway 17 business and bypass. So with that said, we not only have to follow state regulations on what we can do with regard to pedestrian and bicycle safety, we've also got to follow federal guidelines. Now, if you think the state regs are tough, just wait till you get into the federal highway regs. So with that being said, at the first board meeting, the problem was presented. We've got a 5-foot wide bike path that is ineffective. Pedestrians don't even know it's there because it's not striped properly, because DOT won't allow additional striping to show the bike in the path and that sort of thing. And 5 foot wide is just not enough. It's dangerous enough to try to keep a bicycle in a 5-foot path, much less have two meeting. The goal is to have a 10-foot wide pedestrian / bicycle multi-purpose path. That's a great goal. And when the 5-foot path was put in, it was put into state and federal standards so that we could literally shift the road over. And I believe the 5-foot path's on both sides. So you actually have 10 feet. So if you move the road one way or the other, then voila, you would have your 10-foot wide multi-purpose path. Can't do that. Federal Highway Administration won't allow that unless there is a curbed separation between the two. Can't get through that. You can't get around that. It's just the way it is. You can't do that. So if you'll notice, if you'll notice the bike paths, the multipurpose paths that have been constructed, none of them are right up against the road. They are all separated by either a curb or by landscaping or something that would provide a barrier between traffic and the pedestrians and the bicyclists. When you drill down into the problem, there's really only one way to solve the problem if you want a bike path adjacent to US Highway 17 bypass in Murrells Inlet. It becomes not US Highway 17 bypass in Murrells Inlet. Let me give you an example. My firm does a lot of work for the city of Myrtle Beach. All the pedestrian safety aspects on Ocean Boulevard that have been done over the last 15 years have been done only because the city of Myrtle Beach took the road back from the state and federal agency. In other words, they accepted responsibility for Ocean Boulevard. It's their road. It is a city street. When it's a city street, you can do about whatever you want to do with it. Hence the raised pedestrian crosswalks between 9th and 12th, the beautification, the burying the overhead utilities, all those things became possible because the city of Myrtle Beach said, enough of these regs, we're going to do it ourselves. Now there are great advantages to that. The advantages are it's your road. You can do what you want to with it. A lot of disadvantages too. First of all, every business and everybody that may have a residence along there, their address is probably so-and-so, Highway 17 bypass, Murrells Inlet, South Carolina. That'll have to change. You can't, it won't be that anymore. It'll be Murrells Inlet Main Street. It'll be whatever the community or the county chooses to name it. The other downside is the maintenance will stop from a federal and state perspective. And many people in here say, well, they're not maintaining it much anyway, and I've got to agree with that. Representative Goldfinch is here tonight, and I know he's been trying to help, but we need better funding at DOT, and that's another subject for another talk. And I promised the folks here tonight I wouldn't say anything bad about some of the intervening groups, so I won't get into that. But that's basically the answer to doing what needs to be done to improve pedestrian and bicycle traffic through Murrells Inlet. Now, is that something you want to do? That is a huge question. That's something that the businesses, you think about the restaurants in Murrells Inlet who depend on Google, who depend on TripFinder, who depend on all of those things to channel people to the inlet, to their prospective restaurant. I know from personal experience, when you have a major change in address like that, it's about 2 years before all of the search engines figure out that it's the same place, it's the same location, but it's a different address. So if the community decides to do this, it's got to be well thought out. And council members here tonight, county council will have to vote to petition the South Carolina Department of Transportation, who will petition Federal Highway Administration to remove the road from the state and federal system. Now, as a precursor to this, after our second meeting, I ran that flag up the flagpole. Both organizations said, yeah, we'll do that. Now, that wasn't really a surprise, but I did get a commitment out of SCDOT that they would bring the road up to current standards. In other words, they would help us through funding the repaving of the road to bring it up to today's standards so that it would be 10 to 12 years before it would have to be resurfaced again, and they would float the money for the traffic markings that we would need. Now, that's a good deal for DOT and federal highways because they've got a one-time investment to get rid of a long-term O&M cost that will go to infinity. I think it's a good deal for the inlet if it's what you want. And that is a hard decision, and it's up to county council because county council will be taking on the maintenance of that road from the county line to the end of it in perpetuity. What Horry County does with their end of the road will probably have to be coordinated between the two counties, much like the widening of Highway 707. Highway 707 was a Ride-To project funded by the penny sales tax. We didn't want that 5-lane section to end at the county line, so they worked out a deal with Georgetown County. Georgetown County stepped up to pay for the segment from the county line to the intersection. So that's where we are from a DOT and federal highway perspective.